Jake Morrison sat in his small apartment in Detroit. The TV was on, but he was not really watching. His third beer of the night sat warm in his hand. The fake leg leaning against his coffee table caught his eye again. He hated looking at it. 2 years ago, a bomb had taken his real leg and ended his time as a Marine. At 32, Jake felt old and tired. His best days were behind him. The apartment was small and dirty. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter. His disability check barely covered rent and food. Most days, he just sat here drinking beer and trying not to think about the past. The news was talking about aliens again. Some new crisis with the alien coalition that had made contact with Earth 5 years ago. Jake did not care much about politics or space stuff. He had his own problems. But then a face appeared on the TV screen. A blue face with silver hair and purple eyes. Jake's beer bottle slipped from his fingers and crashed to the floor. Glass scattered everywhere, but he did not move. He just stared at the screen. 10 years ago, Jake had been a different man. Sergeant Morrison, United States Marines. Tough, strong, ready for anything. His unit was on a mission in the mountains of Afghanistan. They were looking for enemy weapons when they found something else entirely. It was a ship, but not like any ship Jake had ever seen. It was silver and smooth, shaped like a teardrop. Steam rose from its damaged hull. The thing had crashed hard into the rocky mountainside. "What the hell is that?" asked Private Tony Lopez, the youngest member of their squad. Captain Steve Miller wanted to call it in right away. "This is way above our pay grade," he said into his radio. But Jake heard something. A soft sound coming from inside the crashed ship, like someone crying. "Wait," Jake said. "There might be someone alive in there." Captain Miller looked annoyed. "Morrison, we follow orders. We report this and wait for the science guys." Jake nodded, but something felt wrong. The crying sound came again. Weaker this time. If someone was alive in there, they might not have much time. While the captain was busy with his radio, Jake slipped away from the group. He found a crack in the ship's hull big enough to squeeze through. Inside, everything was dark and strange. The walls seemed to glow with a soft blue light. The air smelled like flowers and metal. And there, in the corner, was a girl. She looked young, maybe 16 years old. Her skin was blue like the ocean. Her hair was silver and seemed to shine in the dark. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead. She was wearing clothes that looked like they were made of starlight. When she saw Jake, she tried to back away. Fear filled her purple eyes. She said something in a language he had never heard. The words sounded like music. Jake held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm here to help." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she pointed to herself and said one word. "Zara." "Zara," Jake repeated. He pointed to himself. "Jake." Over the next hour, Jake learned that Zara was badly hurt. She could not walk. Her left arm hung at a wrong angle. But she was alive, and that was what mattered. Jake made a choice that would change everything. Instead of bringing Zara to his captain, he hid her. There was a cave system near the crash site. Jake had explored it during an earlier mission. It was deep and hidden with fresh water from an underground spring. He carried Zara there and made her comfortable. For the next 3 weeks, Jake lived 2 lives. During the day, he was Sergeant Morrison, following orders and keeping his mouth shut about what he had found. At night, he snuck away to take care of Zara. He brought her food and water. He cleaned her wounds with his first aid kit. Slowly, she got better. And slowly, she learned to speak English. She was incredibly smart. Words that took Jake years to learn, she picked up in days. "Why do you help me?" she asked one night. Her English was getting much better. Jake thought about it. "Because you needed help," he said finally. "But I am not your people. I am different." "Does not matter," Jake said. "Right is right." Zara looked at him with those strange purple eyes. "You are unusual," she said. As Zara got stronger, she told Jake about her people. They lived among the stars. They had great ships and powerful weapons. But they also had enemies. Her ship had been attacked while exploring this part of space. She was the only survivor. "My people will look for me," she said. "But it may take time." Jake nodded. He did not really understand all the space stuff, but he understood that she was far from home. On the last night, Zara could walk again. Her arm had healed. She looked almost ready to leave, though Jake did not know how. "I must go soon," she said. "But first I give you this." She pressed something into Jake's hand. It was a small crystal, no bigger than a coin. It felt warm and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Protection," Zara said. "And memory. If my people ever find you, show them this. They will know what you did for me." "What did I do? I just helped someone who was hurt." Zara smiled. It was the first time Jake had seen her really smile. "Exactly," she said. The next morning, a sandstorm hit the mountains. When it cleared, Zara was gone. Jake never saw her again. He told his unit that he had found nothing in the wreckage. The crashed ship had been buried by the storm. Nobody ever questioned his report. Jake kept the crystal all these years. Sometimes, late at night, he would hold it and remember the scared blue girl he had helped. He wondered if she had made it home safely. He wondered if he would ever see her again. Now, sitting in his dirty apartment with broken glass around his feet, Jake stared at the TV. The blue woman on the screen was older now. She wore a crown that looked like it was made of stars. Her clothes were rich and beautiful. She stood in front of the United Nations building in New York. "I am Empress Zarathel of the Etherian Coalition," she said in perfect English. Her voice was strong and confident, nothing like the scared girl from the cave. But Jake knew those eyes, those purple eyes that had looked at him with such trust 10 years ago. The crystal in his pocket began to glow. Jake Morrison's quiet life was about to change forever. The crystal had been glowing for 2 hours now. Jake held it in his shaking hands, watching the blue light pulse like a heartbeat. He had cleaned up the broken beer bottle and turned off the TV, but he could not stop thinking about what he had seen. Zara was alive. Not just alive, but powerful. An empress of some kind of space government, and she was here on Earth. Jake was still staring at the crystal when he heard the cars outside. But these were not normal cars. They made no sound at all. No engine noise. No tires on pavement. Nothing. He looked out his window and felt his blood turn cold. 3 black vehicles sat in the street below. They looked normal enough, but something was wrong with them. They seemed to bend the light around them, like looking at something underwater. Men in dark suits got out of the cars. They moved too smoothly, too perfectly, like machines pretending to be human. Jake's marine training kicked in. He grabbed his old service pistol from the drawer and checked the clip. 15 rounds. Not much, but better than nothing. The knock on his door was soft and polite. "Mr. Morrison?" came a woman's voice. "We need to talk." Jake kept the gun ready but did not point it at the door. "Who are you?" "Friends," the voice said. "We know about the crystal. We know about the girl you saved. Please open the door. We are here to help." Jake thought about it. He could try to run, but where would he go? These people had found him somehow. They knew about Zara. Running would just make things worse. He opened the door but kept the gun at his side. The woman in front of him looked normal enough. Brown hair, dark suit, tired eyes. She was maybe 40 years old. Behind her stood 2 men who definitely were not normal. They were too tall, too thin. Their eyes reflected light like a cat's. "I'm Director Lisa Warren," the woman said. "These are my associates. May we come in?" Jake stepped back and let them enter. The 2 strange men said nothing. They just looked around his apartment with those weird eyes. "What do you want?" Jake asked. Lisa Warren sat down on his couch without being asked. 10 years ago, you found something in Afghanistan. Something that officially never happened." "I don't know what you're talking about." Warren smiled. "Mr. Morrison, the crystal in your pocket is currently broadcasting a signal that can be detected from orbit. Lying to us won't help anyone." Jake felt stupid. Of course they could track the crystal. "Okay, so you know." "What now?" Now we take you somewhere safe, Warren said. Because in about 6 hours every government on Earth is going to want to talk to you, and some of them might not be as polite as we are. One of the strange men spoke for the first time. His voice sounded like wind through metal. The Empress has asked for the Guardian. You are the Guardian. Guardian? Jake asked. That's what she called you, Warren said. In her official statement to the UN, she said she wanted to meet with the Guardian who saved her life 10 years ago. She gave enough details that our computers identified you within an hour. Jake sat down hard in his chair. Jesus, the whole world knows? Not yet, Warren said. But they will soon. We need to get you to a safe place where you can be briefed on the situation. What situation? Warren looked at the two strange men. They nodded slightly. Mr. Morrison, first contact with alien species happened 60 years ago. The public was told it was 5 years ago, because that's when we stopped being able to hide. There are 47 different alien species in contact with various Earth governments. Some are friendly, some are not. Jake felt dizzy. 60 years? The Etherian Coalition is one of the most powerful groups in this part of space. Empress U. Zarathel showing up personally is like the President of the United States visiting a small village in Africa. It doesn't happen unless something very important is going on. And what's important is me. What's important is what you did, Warren said, and what that says about humanity. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, What does that mean? One of the strange men answered, Most species kill or capture anything different from themselves. You helped a stranger who could have been an enemy. This is unusual. Warren nodded. We need to go, Mr. Morrison. There's a lot you need to learn, and not much time to learn it. Jake looked around his small apartment. It was not much, but it was his. What if I say no? Then you'll probably be dead by morning, Warren said simply. There are groups who would rather humanity never join the galactic community. They might try to remove you from the equation. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Great, so I saved one girl 10 years ago and now people want to kill me for it. That's about right, Warren said. Jake sighed and put his gun back in the drawer. Okay, let's go. The ride to wherever they were going was strange. The car did not feel like it was moving, even though Jake could see the city passing by outside. One of the strange men sat next to him while Warren sat up front with the driver. Are you guys human? Jake asked the man next to him. Mostly, the man replied. That was not a comforting answer. They drove for what felt like hours, but Jake's watch said only 20 minutes had passed. Finally, they stopped at what looked like an old warehouse in an industrial part of the city. Inside, the warehouse was not a warehouse at all. It was some kind of high-tech facility with computers and screens everywhere. People in lab coats hurried back and forth. Some of them looked human. Others definitely did not. Warren led Jake to a small office where a man in his 30s was waiting. He had Asian features and wore a white lab coat over jeans and a t-shirt. Mr. Morrison, this is Dr. Alex Chen, Warren said. He's our expert on alien technology. Dr. Chen shook Jake's hand. Pleased to meet you. May I see the crystal? Jake hesitated, then pulled the crystal from his pocket. It was still glowing softly. Dr. Chen's eyes went wide. Oh my, he said softly. This is incredible. What is it? Jake asked. It's not just a communication device, Dr. Chen said, studying the crystal with some kind of scanner. It's been studying you. For 10 years it's been recording everything about you. Your DNA, your brain patterns, your emotional responses, everything. Jake felt sick. It's been spying on me? Not spying, Dr. Chen said. Learning. This crystal has been trying to understand what makes you, you. What makes any human, human. Warren leaned forward. What kind of data are we talking about? Everything, Dr. Chen said. How he reacts to stress. How he makes moral decisions. His capacity for growth and change. It's like a 10-year psychological study compressed into a device the size of a coin. Jake sat down. Why would they want to know all that? Because, came a new voice from the doorway. Most species are predictable, humans are not. Everyone turned to look at the newcomer. He was tall and muscular, with short blonde hair and scars on his hands. He wore military fatigues with no rank or unit markings. "Commander Kyle Patterson," the man said, extending his hand to Jake. "Former Navy SEAL, currently serving as a cultural advisor for alien relations." "There are others like me?" Jake asked. "A few," Kyle said. "People who've had direct contact with alien species over the years, but nothing like your situation. You're the first human to ever have an alien ruler specifically request a meeting." "Why is that important?" Kyle and Warren exchanged looks. Warren nodded. "Because," Kyle said, "humanity is currently being evaluated for membership in the galactic community. It's a process that usually takes about 100 years. Most species fail." "Fail how?" "They prove they're too violent, too primitive, or too dangerous to be trusted with advanced technology," Kyle explained. "The evaluation period is designed to test every aspect of a species' culture and psychology." Jake was starting to understand. "And my meeting with this Empress is part of that evaluation." "We think so," Warren said. "But the fact that she's come here personally suggests something has changed. The normal evaluation process has been accelerated." Dr. Chen was still studying the crystal. "There's something else," he said quietly. "This device isn't just collecting data. It's been transmitting it." "Transmitting where?" Warren demanded. "Everywhere," Dr. Chen said. "Every major power in the galactic community has been receiving copies of this data for the past 10 years. They've all been studying human psychology through Jake Morrison." The room was quiet for a long moment. "So I'm like a test subject," Jake said finally. "You're the test subject," Kyle corrected. "Everything humanity might become in space, they're judging based on what you've done and who you are." Jake felt the weight of 6 billion people settling on his shoulders. "That's insane. I'm nobody special. I'm just a washed-up Marine with a fake leg." "That's exactly why they chose you," Kyle said. "You're not a politician or a scientist or a general. You're just a regular person who made an extraordinary choice when it mattered." Before Jake could respond, alarms started going off throughout the facility. Red lights flashed and people began running. Warren grabbed a phone. "What's happening?" "Ma'am," came a voice over the speakers. "We have massive ships appearing in orbit. Dozens of them. They're requesting permission to land." Warren looked at Jake. "The Empress is here." The crystal in Jake's hand began to pulse faster, its blue light growing brighter. "I guess it's time to find out what she wants," Jake said. Outside, the sky began to fill with lights that were not stars. The ships in the sky were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They looked like giant teardrops made of silver and light. Some were as big as football stadiums. They hung in the air without making any sound, as if gravity meant nothing to them. Jake stood in Central Park wearing his old Marine dress uniform. It was tight around his stomach and loose in places it used to fit perfectly. But it was all he had that seemed right for meeting an Empress. The whole world was watching. Cameras from every news station on Earth pointed at the small stage that had been built overnight. World leaders sat in chairs behind Jake, but somehow he knew they did not matter right now. This meeting was about him and Zara. Director Warren stood next to him talking into a small microphone. "Remember, just be yourself. Don't try to be diplomatic, that's not why she's here." "Easy for you to say," Jake muttered. His hands were shaking and his mouth felt dry. Kyle Patterson was on his other side. "The Empress will probably have a full honor guard with her. Don't be intimidated. They're just for show." Jake wanted to laugh. Just for show? He was about to meet beings from another world, and Kyle thought he should not be intimidated. A low humming sound filled the air. One of the smaller ships began to descend toward the park. As it got closer, Jake could see that it was not really solid. The hull seemed to be made of flowing light that occasionally became metal. The ship landed without a sound. No wind, no dust, nothing. It just settled onto the grass like it weighed nothing at all. A doorway opened in the side of the ship. Light spilled out, but it was not harsh. It was soft and blue, like moonlight. The first beings to emerge made Jake's breath catch in his throat. They looked like people, but they were made of stars. Literally. Their bodies were transparent and filled with points of light that moved like tiny constellations. They wore no clothes, but somehow managed to look formal and impressive. Behind them came soldiers in armor that seemed to bend and twist light around itself. Jake could not quite focus on them. His eyes kept sliding away, like trying to look directly at the sun. Then came the Empress. Zarathel was taller than Jake remembered. She moved with perfect grace, like she was floating instead of walking. Her blue skin seemed to glow from within. Her silver hair was longer now, reaching past her shoulders. And her purple eyes. Those eyes found Jake immediately. For just a moment, he saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, recognition, fear, but it was gone so fast he might have imagined it. She wore robes that looked like they were cut from the night sky itself. Stars and galaxies swirled in the dark fabric. On her head was a crown that was not really a crown. It was more like a collection of small suns that orbited her head in slow, perfect circles. The Empress walked across the grass toward the stage. Her honor guard followed at a respectful distance. When she reached the microphones, she stopped and looked directly at Jake. "Guardian Jake Morrison," she said, and her voice carried across the entire park without any amplification. Everyone in the world who was watching on TV could hear her clearly. Jake's throat felt tight. "Your Majesty," he managed to say. "10 years ago," the Empress continued, "you made a choice that has been studied by the greatest minds in the galactic community. When you found me, injured and helpless, you had 3 options. You could have killed me, viewing me as an enemy. You could have captured me, hoping to gain something from my knowledge or technology. Or you could have helped me, asking for nothing in return." Jake felt like everyone in the world was staring at him. "I just did what felt right." "Yes," the Empress said, and now she was smiling slightly. "That is exactly what makes it so remarkable." She gestured, and one of the star beings stepped forward. In its hands was a device that projected images in the air above the crowd. The images showed data, charts, numbers that meant nothing to Jake but made several world leaders gasp. "For 10 years, the Empress explained, the crystal device you carry has been studying not just you, but your entire species. It has monitored your news, your entertainment, your social interactions. It has built a profile of human behavior that spans your entire civilization." The images changed, showing scenes from around the world. People helping strangers, soldiers risking their lives to save enemies, doctors treating patients regardless of their ability to pay. "What we found," the Empress said, "challenges everything we thought we knew about emerging species. Most civilizations at your level of development are driven entirely by self-interest. They help only their own kind. They view anything different as a threat to be eliminated." More images appeared. Jake saw humans working alongside aliens in what looked like space stations, human doctors treating alien patients, human engineers working on ships that clearly came from other worlds. "But humans," the Empress continued, "show an unusual capacity for what you call compassion. You help others not because you gain something from it, but because you believe it is the right thing to do." Jake was starting to understand where this was going, and it scared him. "The galactic community has observed your species for over 60 years, the Empress said. "We have seen you wage terrible wars. We have seen you destroy your own environment. We have seen you create weapons capable of ending all life on your planet." The images now showed the dark side of humanity. Wars, pollution, violence. Jake winced as he watched his own species' worst moments played out for all to see. "But we have also seen something else," the Empress said, and the images changed again. "We have seen you risk everything to save strangers. We have seen you sacrifice your own comfort to help those in need. We have seen you choose mercy when revenge would be easier." Now the images showed humans at their best. Rescue workers pulling people from collapsed buildings, doctors traveling to remote areas to treat the poor, teachers working in dangerous neighborhoods because they believed education could change lives. "Guardian Morrison," the Empress said, turning to face Jake directly, Your choice to help me was not unique among your species. It was representative of something deeper in human nature, something that makes you valuable to the galactic community. Jake found his voice. What are you saying? I am saying that humanity will not undergo the standard evaluation period, the Empress announced. Instead, the Etherian Coalition offers immediate provisional membership in the galactic community. The crowd erupted. World leaders jumped to their feet. Cameras flashed like lightning, but Jake barely heard any of it. He was focused on Zara's eyes, and what he saw there worried him. There's more, isn't there? He asked quietly. The Empress nodded almost imperceptibly. There is always more, she said, too softly for the microphones to pick up. But we will discuss that later. She raised her voice again. Guardian Morrison, as the human who first made contact with our people, you are invited to serve as humanity's first ambassador to the Etherian Coalition. Jake felt the world spinning around him. Ambassador? He was a washed-up Marine who lived in a crappy apartment and drank too much beer. How could he represent all of humanity? I don't know if I'm qualified for that, he said. The Empress smiled, and for just a moment she looked like the scared girl he had helped in the cave. Qualification is not about education or training, she said. It is about character. And your character has already been tested. She gestured to her honor guard. My ship will remain in orbit for the next 72 hours. During that time, you will be our guest. You will learn about the galactic community and your role in it. And if I say no? Jake asked. The Empress's smile faded. Then humanity will undergo the standard evaluation process, which typically takes 100 years, and which most species fail. Jake understood. This was not really a choice. Accept the job, and humanity gets fast-tracked into space civilization. Refuse, and they get a century of testing that they would probably fail. When do we leave? He asked. Now, the Empress said. As they walked toward her ship, Jake caught Kyle Patterson's eye. The former SEAL looked worried. Very worried. Jake was about to ask why when he noticed something. The Empress's honor guard was not just protecting her. They were also watching the sky as if expecting trouble. Is there something you're not telling me? Jake asked the Empress quietly. There is much I am not telling you, she replied. But we will have time to talk aboard my ship. As they reached the ship's entrance, Jake looked back at Earth one more time. The planet looked small and fragile from here, floating in the darkness of space like a blue marble. He had a feeling it would be a long time before he saw it again. The ship's door closed behind them with a soft sound like a sigh. Inside, everything was curved and smooth, like the inside of a seashell. The walls glowed with soft blue light, and Jake could hear something that might have been music, or might have been the ship itself humming. Welcome aboard the Starlight Eternal, the Empress said. Your new life begins now. Jake Morrison, former Marine Sergeant from Detroit, was about to become humanity's first ambassador to the stars. He just hoped he was ready for whatever came. Next, the crystal in his pocket pulsed one more time, then went dark. Its job was done. Jake's first week aboard the Starlight Eternal was like living in a dream. The ship was huge, more like a floating city than anything he had ever imagined. Corridors stretched for miles, filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated through the air or moved on more legs than Jake could count. His quarters were bigger than his apartment back in Detroit. The walls could show any view he wanted. Mountains, oceans, even Earth hanging in space. The bed was more comfortable than anything he had ever slept on. And the food. Jake had never tasted anything like the food here. It was brought to him by creatures that looked like walking flowers. They spoke in musical tones and seemed to take genuine pleasure in making sure he was well fed. But the best part was his leg. On his second day aboard the ship, Empress Zarathel had taken him to the medical bay. Creatures that looked like living jewels had examined his prosthetic with great interest. We can fix this, one of them had said in a voice like wind chimes. If you wish. Jake had been so surprised he could barely speak. Fix it? You mean give me a new fake leg? No, the creature replied. We mean give you a new real leg. The process had taken 3 hours. Jake had expected pain, but there was none. When it was over, he looked down to see his leg exactly as it had been before the bomb. Real skin, real muscle, real bone. He could feel everything. When he stood up and took his first steps, he almost cried. "Why?" he asked the Empress later. "Why give me this?" "Because you will need to be whole for what comes next," she had replied. That answer worried him, but he was too grateful to press for details. On his 5th day aboard the ship, Jake met Commander Kyle Patterson in the ship's recreation area. Kyle looked uncomfortable, which was strange. The former SEAL was usually calm about everything. "We need to talk," Kyle said, sitting down next to Jake at a table that seemed to be made of solid light. "About what?" Kyle looked around to make sure no one was listening. "About what's really going on here." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this whole thing is not what it seems," Kyle said quietly. "The Empress offering humanity immediate membership? That's not normal. It's never happened before." "Maybe we're special," Jake suggested. Kyle shook his head. "Every species thinks they're special, but the galactic community has rules for a reason. They don't break those rules without a very good cause." "So what's the cause?" Kyle was quiet for a moment. "There are 3 main factions in the Etherian coalition," he said finally. "The integrationists want to help younger species develop peacefully. The isolationists think most species should be left alone until they prove themselves worthy. And the expansionists? What about the expansionists? They think younger species make good soldiers for the coalition's wars." Jake felt cold. "Wars? What wars?" "There are always wars out here," Kyle said. "Territory disputes, resource conflicts, some species that refuse to join the coalition and cause trouble for everyone else. And they want humans to fight in these wars. Humans have something most species don't," Kyle explained. "We're adaptable. We learn fast, we don't give up easily, and we're willing to die for causes we believe in. That makes us valuable as allies, or as weapons." Jake thought about this. "Which faction does the Empress belong to?" "That's the problem," Kyle said. "Nobody knows for sure. She's been very careful not to show her hand. But bringing you here, offering humanity immediate membership, it's put her in a dangerous position." "Dangerous how?" Kyle leaned closer. "Because some of the other factions think she's either too soft on humans or trying to build her own personal army. Either way, there are people who want her removed from power." Before Jake could ask more questions, an announcement echoed through the ship. All passengers and crew were to report to their stations. The ship was approaching the coalition homeworld. Through the walls of his quarters, Jake could see a planet unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was huge, at least 10 times the size of Earth. 3 moons orbited around it, each one covered in cities that sparkled like diamonds. Space elevators stretched from the planet's surface up into orbit, connecting to massive stations that looked like small worlds themselves. "It's beautiful," Jake said to himself. "It is," came a voice behind him. Jake turned to see the Empress entering his quarters. She looked tired, and there were worry lines around her purple eyes that had not been there before. "Your Majesty," Jake said, starting to stand. "Please," she said, waving him back down. "We need to talk, and there is not much time." She sat across from him, and for a moment, she did not look like an empress at all. She looked like the scared girl he had found in the cave. "There are things I have not told you," she said. "Things you need to know before we reach the surface." Kyle said there might be trouble. The Empress nodded. "Commander Patterson is correct. My decision to elevate humanity has created complications." "What kind of complications?" "The kind that might get us both killed," she said simply. Jake felt his Marine training kick in. "What's the threat?" 3 days ago, while we were traveling here, the Coalition Council met in emergency session. They voted on my fitness to remain as Empress, and the vote was very close, closer than it should have been. There are now serious questions about my judgment and my loyalty to coalition interests. Jake was starting to understand. Because you're helping humans. Because I am helping humans based on the actions of one man, the Empress corrected. Many council members believe that is not sufficient evidence to grant an entire species immediate membership. So what happens now? The Empress was quiet for a long moment. Now you face your real test, she said. In 2 hours you will appear before the full Coalition Council. They will ask you questions. They will challenge your answers. They will try to prove that humanity is not ready for membership. And if I fail? If you fail, humanity goes back to the standard evaluation process, and I will likely be removed from power for poor judgment. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on him again. What if I succeed? If you succeed, humanity becomes a full member of the coalition immediately, and you become their first ambassador. That doesn't sound so bad. The Empress smiled, sadly. There is more. If humanity becomes a full member, you will be expected to provide military support for coalition operations. Your species will be asked to fight in wars that have nothing to do with Earth. Jake's blood went cold. You want us to be your soldiers? Not me, the Empress said quickly. But yes, that is what membership means. The coalition is not just a peaceful organization, Ambassador Morrison. It is a military alliance. Members are expected to contribute to the common defense. Against who? Against species that refuse to join, against pirates and raiders, against threats from outside our part of the galaxy. Jake thought about Earth, about people going about their daily lives not knowing that their future was being decided in a room full of aliens. What if I refuse to take the test? Then you and I return to Earth, and humanity continues its current path. No faster-than-light travel. No advanced technology. No contact with other species except through carefully controlled channels. But we'd be safe. For now, the Empress agreed. But eventually other species will make contact. Some of them will not be as friendly as the coalition, and when that happens, humanity will face those threats alone. Jake looked out at the massive planet below. Somewhere down there, beings from across the galaxy were waiting to judge his entire species based on what he said and did. What do you think I should do? He asked. The Empress reached across the table and took his hand. Her skin was warm, and he could feel a slight electric tingle where they touched. I think you should do what you did 10 years ago, she said. Make the choice that feels right to you. Not the choice that others expect, not the choice that seems safest. The choice that you can live with. Jake nodded. When do we land? In 1 hour. Jake stood up and looked around his quarters one more time. In an hour, he would either become humanity's voice among the stars, or he would doom his species to a long, slow evaluation that they might not survive. Your Majesty, he said as the Empress reached the door. Yes? What happened to the scared girl I found in that cave? The Empress smiled, and for a moment she looked young again. She grew up, she said, but she never forgot the human who taught her that strangers could be kind. I hope that's enough. So do I, the Empress said. So do I. As the ship began its descent toward the planet's surface, Jake Morrison prepared to face the greatest challenge of his life. In a few hours, he would stand before beings who could destroy worlds and try to convince them that humanity deserved a place among the stars. He just hoped he could find the right words. The Coalition Council chamber was the most incredible thing Jake had ever seen. It was a massive sphere, floating in space above the planet's surface. The walls were transparent, giving a perfect view of the stars in all directions. Beings from hundreds of different worlds sat in sections that curved around the central speaking area. Jake stood in the middle of it all, wearing his marine dress uniform. The Empress had offered him fancy robes, but he had refused. If he was going to represent humanity, he wanted to look human. The beings around him were beyond imagination. Some looked like giant insects made of crystal. Others were clouds of glowing gas that somehow managed to maintain human-like shapes. There were creatures that looked like living metal, beings that seemed to be made of pure light, and things that Jake could not even begin to describe. But they all had one thing in common. They were all staring at him. At the front of the chamber sat the High Council, 5 beings who represented the most powerful species in the coalition. In the center was a creature that looked like a tree made of silver, with branches that moved like arms and leaves that glowed with inner fire. "Human Jake Morrison," the tree being said in a voice like wind through branches. "You stand before the Coalition Council to speak for your species. Are you prepared?" "Yes, sir," Jake replied. His voice echoed strangely in the chamber. "Very well. The Council recognizes Chancellor Vex of the Dominion." A section of the chamber lit up, and Jake saw a being that looked like a cross between a spider and a machine. Its voice was like metal scraping against metal. "Human Morrison," it said. "Your species is violent and primitive. In your short history, you have waged countless wars against your own kind. You have destroyed vast areas of your planet's ecosystem. You create weapons designed to eliminate all life. Why should civilized beings trust such a species?" Jake had expected this question. "Because we're learning," he said simply. "Every species makes mistakes. The question is whether they learn from them." "And what have humans learned?" Chancellor Vex asked. "That violence doesn't solve problems. That taking care of our planet is more important than making profits. That working together gets better results than fighting each other. Yet you still have wars," another council member pointed out. This one looked like a giant jellyfish floating in a tank of water. "Yes," Jake admitted. "But fewer than we used to have. And they're smaller. 100 years ago, my people fought. Wars that killed millions. Today, we try to stop conflicts before they start. Try," Chancellor Vex said, "but often fail." "Yes," Jake said again, "but we keep trying. And that's what matters." The questions continued for what felt like hours. The council asked about human government, human religion, human technology. They wanted to know about crime rates and poverty levels. They asked about how humans treated other species on Earth. Jake answered as honestly as he could. He did not try to make humanity sound perfect. Instead, he talked about what they were trying to become. Finally, the silver tree at the center of the High Council spoke again. "Human Morrison, we have reviewed the data collected about your species over the past 10 years. We have seen both your potential and your flaws, but there is one question that remains unanswered." "What's that, sir?" "What would humanity do if, faced with a choice between their own survival and doing what is right?" Jake thought about this. It was not a hypothetical question. He could tell from the way the council members were watching him that this was the real test. "I can't speak for all humans," he said finally, "but I can tell you what I would do. I would do what's right, even if it meant dying for it." "Even if it meant your entire species dying for it?" Jake felt cold. I hope it would never come to that." "But if it did?" Jake closed his eyes and thought about Earth, about his family and friends, about all the people who had no idea that their fate was being decided in this chamber. "Yes," he said quietly. Even then, the chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber. Beings jumped to their feet. The silver tree's branches began moving frantically. "What's happening?" Jake asked. The Empress appeared at his side. She looked pale and frightened. "We're under attack," she said. Through the transparent walls of the chamber, Jake could see ships approaching. They were dark and angular, nothing, like the smooth curves of coalition vessels. Energy beams lanced out from the attacking ships, striking the space stations around the planet. "Who are they?" Jake asked. "The Void Collective," the Empress replied. "A group of species that refuses to join the coalition. They've been planning this attack for months." One of the High Council members, a being that looked like living crystal, stood up. "All council members must evacuate immediately," it announced. But Jake was not listening. He was watching the battle outside. Coalition ships were fighting back, but they were outnumbered. And Jake could see something that made his blood freeze. One of the attacking ships was heading directly for Earth. "They're going to attack Earth," he said. The Empress followed his gaze and gasped. "The Void Collective must have planned this. They want to destroy humanity before we can join the coalition. Jake felt everything click into place. This was his real test, not the questions from the council. I need to get to Earth, he said. Jake, no, the Empress said. You can't fight an entire invasion fleet by yourself. I'm not going to fight them, Jake said. I'm going to stop them. Before the Empress could argue, Jake was running toward the chamber's exit. Behind him, he could hear her calling his name, but he did not stop. In the corridor outside the chamber, Jake found Kyle Patterson and a small group of human military advisors who had been brought along as observers. Patterson, Jake called, we need to get to Earth now. Kyle looked at the chaos around them. Coalition beings were running in all directions. Ships were launching from docking bays. How? Our transport ship doesn't have weapons. We're not going to fight, Jake said. We're going to do something else. 30 minutes later, Jake found himself aboard a coalition assault craft with Kyle and 5 other humans. The ship's pilot was one of the star beings from the Empress's honor guard. This is suicide, Kyle said as they raced through space toward Earth. What exactly are you planning to do? The Void Collective is attacking Earth to prove that humans can't be trusted with advanced technology, Jake explained. They want to show the coalition that we're too weak to be members. So we're going to prove them wrong. As they approached Earth, Jake could see the battle raging in orbit. The single Void Collective ship that had broken through the coalition defenses was massive. It hung in space above North America like a dark moon. Can you get us aboard that ship? Jake asked the pilot. The star being's constellation body flickered with what might have been surprise. Aboard? That would be extremely dangerous. Can you do it? Yes. But why would you want to go aboard an enemy vessel? Jake looked at his small team. 6 humans and 1 alien, against a ship full of hostile aliens who wanted to destroy Earth. Because sometimes the right thing to do is also the stupidest thing to do. The next hour was the longest of Jake's life. They managed to board the Void Collective ship through a damaged section of its hull. Inside, the corridors were dark and filled with creatures that looked like nightmares, but Jake and his team were not there to fight. They were there to send a message. Deep inside the ship, they found what they were looking for. The ship's main communication array. While Kyle and the others held off the alien crew, Jake worked to hack into the system using skills he had learned aboard the Empress's ship. Finally, he managed to send a signal that reached every coalition ship in the system, as well as Earth's communication networks. This is Ambassador Jake Morrison, he said into the communicator. I'm speaking from aboard the Void Collective attack ship. We came here not to destroy our enemies, but to save them. Through the ship's internal cameras, Jake could see that his words were being broadcast to the coalition fleet. He could also see that the Void Collective crew had stopped fighting to listen. The Void Collective is attacking Earth because they believe humans are too violent to be trusted, Jake continued. But they're wrong. We're not violent. We're protective. We fight not because we hate our enemies, but because we love what we're protecting. Jake made his choice. Instead of sabotaging the ship's weapons to save Earth, he sabotaged its life support systems to save the crew. I'm shutting down this ship's attack capabilities, he announced, but I'm also activating its emergency systems to keep the crew alive, because killing them would prove their point about humanity. As the ship's weapons powered down, Jake could see coalition vessels moving in to surround it. But instead of destroying it, they were preparing to rescue the crew. The Void Collective attack failed, but not because they were defeated in battle. It failed because humanity chose mercy over revenge. 3 days later, Jake stood once again before the Coalition Council. This time there was no debate. The species known as humanity has proven itself worthy of immediate full membership in the Aetherian Coalition, the Silver Tree announced. Ambassador Morrison, do you accept this membership on behalf of your people? Jake thought about Earth, about the responsibilities that came with membership, about the wars his people might have to fight and the prices they might have to pay. Then he